Hello and welcome to Chapter 14. This is the beginning of colonialism and exploration. So, some of the things we've talked about, especially with the fall of the Byzantine Empire. The West is now cut off from the East, and the trade of goods and stuff like that that they had come to appreciate, especially during the Crusades. And remember, throughout the whole course of world history, there has been a lot of trade between Europe and Asia. But now they're looking for a quicker way to do it. So, some of the countries that get the ball rolling, you have Portugal with their Prince Henry the Navigator. They're going down around the coast of Africa. And then eventually the Portuguese go all the way around Africa and they end up in India. And so one of the first cities they come to is Goa, which remained Portuguese, after they colonized it up until the 1960s or so. So that's Portugal. Their explorationary stuff. You got Spain, after they've kicked out the last of the Moors from North Africa, are also doing exploration type stuff. And one of the early things that the Spanish and Portuguese agreed to is that they'll just split the world in half. Treaty of Tordesillas. So this map isn't totally to scale, but the gist of the Treaty of Tordesillas is that there's this imaginary line, the 32nd. It's not parallel. It's the ones that go up and down. That line divides how the world is, between Spain and Portugal. So Spain gets everything west of the line. Portugal gets everything east of the line. So the Portuguese get all of Africa and India and Southeast Asia, and by contrast, the Spanish get everything to the west of that line. So all of the Americas, a lot of the Caribbean. But except for a little sliver of South America, and that sliver becomes Brazil. Now, of course, let's use our thinking caps, folks. What are some problems with Spain and Portugal dividing the world among themselves? Well, there's a couple of things. One, there's Spain and Portugal. There are other countries that have interests in these areas. Portugal getting all of this, that's impossible to enforce. And then, how do you know, this is before Google Maps, how do you know where the line is? There's just a lot of problems. So this falls apart pretty soon after its implementation, especially once other countries start getting into the mix. So, you have the initial explorers who are going around charting out what these areas are looking like. And then you have the beginning of Spanish conquistadors. So some of the conquistadors, Hernando Cortez takes over the Aztec Empire, who we talked about earlier. And so, interestingly enough, as he's conquering the Aztec Empire, a lot of people who the Aztecs had oppressed helped the Spanish, and then, very quickly find that may not have been the best decision. But now, Spain controls most of the Aztec Empire, and then Pizarro goes down and begins the conquest of the Incan Empire, and the Portuguese are colonizing the coast of Brazil. So South America is starting to get colonized. And what they find is the Incan Empire and the Aztec Empire, the newly acquired Spanish territories, are extremely, extremely gold and silver rich. So that's a boon for Spain, makes them very powerful in Europe. The other countries of Europe don't want to get left behind by this, so they're, England colonizes, the eastern coast of what is now the United States. France comes around into Quebec, and, there's New France, which kind of hems in New England. You have a couple others. Sweden colonizes what is now Delaware, and then the Dutch take that from them, and then the British take back from the Dutch. So there's some fighting going on. Otherwise, so let's talk about what life is like, especially in the Spanish colonies, because that's the vast majority of colonies in North America and South America. You have the encomienda system, so the Spanish are using the Native Americans as more or less slave labor. Very unpleasant for the locals. It's not a good system for them, but the Spanish are making a massive, massive profit. And as that's going on, a lot of the natives are dying of diseases, so the Spanish begin bringing in slaves from the Portuguese held like African coasts. Well, Portugal doesn't control that. So what the Portuguese would do is trade with coastal African powers for slaves, and that's the beginning of the triangle trade. Unfinished goods are coming from the Americas to Europe for processing. Europeans are going down to Africa to get slaves, and slaves are coming to the New World. So, yeah. So that is kind of the Americas in a nutshell. So the natives begin to be supplanted by the new Africans in the forced labor in the New World. Yeah. And then there's kind of a racial hierarchy built upon this system where, Spaniards born in Spain are on the top, the Peninsulares, then you have Spaniards born in the New World, the Creoles, and then it goes down, how mixed Native American or African you are. So it's called colorism, like a ranking of your social class by your racial heritage, I suppose. So that's in the New World, and then of course Portugal does have some colonies in India, like Goa, but then Britain gets in. We'll talk about that more with the Southeast or the British East India Company. Yeah, and another group that comes down, gets involved, is the Dutch. The Dutch come to South Africa. They form Cape Town, and they begin to be called the Afrikaners. Eventually, the British will invade the Dutch Cape Town and push the Dutch further in, and they will form the Boer Republics, Transvaal, and the Orange Free State, and then the British will take those over in the Boer Wars, centuries or so, or in late 1800s, somewhere around there. Yeah. So that is the beginning of global colonialism, and so let's think about, AP World, they love the implications of stuff like this. So now you have the emergence of a global market. The whole world is getting involved. You have goods are coming from the Americas to Europe, or you have goods from Asia going to Europe, or the Arabs are, they're continuing to go along the Swahili coast and stuff like that. So the world is getting much more linked commercially. And so something that affects something happening in America will now have effects in Europe, and it'll have effects in Asia as well. So that's the beginning of globalization. And you can look up, say, the individual explorers, learn more about them, vocabularies or whatever. But that's kind of the broad idea of what's going on. All right, check in next time for the Reformation.